Joining us right now is Korn Ferry Vice Chairman Alan Guarino. Alan, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for joining us. So, look, we know what's been going on with the economic data. That GDP report last Friday was horrible. What are you expecting out of jobs this month?
I think jobs is probably going to be in line with what you're talking about. So,
Okay.
so sub 200,000. And I think that might be the new normal for a long time.
But you see where the jobs are moving. I mean, you're placing people, certainly white-collar jobs. So what industries, where are the jobs right now?
Sure. Well, I mean, our firm does two things. We place folks in key roles, and we work with leadership teams to help their teams improve and develop their staffs. Where we're seeing the activity is where everyone, obviously it's totally transparent. So pharma is growing, healthcare, technology, services, and energy is still not there. Financial services is fits and starts.
That's interesting. I think it's important to note that actually year to date, non-withheld tax receipts are actually down 6.5% this year. That's the gig economy jobs, right, that we're seeing. And that's coming from the Treasury. So if those are down, that's pretty significant. So are you starting to see that trickle through? Like, do you think we will start to see some of the new gig economy jobs slowing down as well?
I think we're going to see a general slowdown. There's just no stimulus for growth. So, for example, venture capital is supposedly drying up after having a bit of a frenzy, right, for the last several years. When I work with emerging growth companies, listen, we work with companies when we're working with employee number one, in some cases the founder, helping to build that entire organization out. And, in past, I can remember, 2 cycles ago, and then most recently coming out of this cycle, when people got $10 or $15 million in venture, they went on a hiring frenzy. They're much more prudent now.
Alan, is there a particular demographic of people that are hurting most and with the jobs not being created as fast as they should? Is it disproportionately affecting millennials, for example?
Good question. I don't think there's an age demographic. I think there's a demographic in terms of the strata within the job pyramid.
Like skills demographic.
Well, skills a little bit, but I think more just sort of think about where middle-class people work. And that's the area that's under pressure, those kind of jobs. And then you start seeing things like $15 an hour legislation and so on and so forth.
Speaking of that, what do you want to see the government do to help hiring?
I've been saying this for almost 20 years, having had the opportunity to...
I don't mean to laugh, but it's been 20 years.
You know what? And I have to tell you, I had the opportunity to start a company, build a company, hire people, make payroll. It was exciting. And what I realize now is that if you give small business a $1 tax credit for every new dollar of new hire payroll, so when they add a $40,000 job, give them a $40,000 tax credit. Basically, what I'm saying is that business knows better what to do with the money than the government. And when that person gets that $40,000,
Say that all the time.
that person is going to pay what? Taxes.
Yeah.
So you're just basically moving the tax from the small business into the person who now has a job.
Yeah.
And they'll be glad to pay some tax.
But
right?
I mean, look at the pressures that are on small business right now. You've got the cost of Obamacare. We just heard from one of the leading doctors, New York Presbyterian Hospital. He said it needs to be changed. And Aetna is backing out now. You've got minimum wages going up.
Sure.
And you've got a regulatory environment that is punishing for small and mid-cap companies.
Absolutely.
So there is policy movements to see this runway clear.
That we have to have policy movement. I have great friends that are upstate in the farming business, and they'll tell you, and these are serious, big-time farming operations, and these are people who employ literally dozens at some time during the year and hundreds. And they're basically saying things that we're facing from a regulatory compliance standpoint are making it almost impossible to continue to farm. And yet you read in the Wall Street Journal a couple of months ago, upstate New York is going to feed New York City over the next 20 years. Well, guess what? We need farms up there if we're going to feed New York City.
People who haven't worked in small businesses, your parents, my parents, they don't understand how complicated it is. And they spend time, I mean, all of their time is spent just with a completely fouled up tax code and regulations that they have to go out and hire attorneys and accountants to make any kind of sense of this rather than just growing the business and hiring more people.
And then there's technology. I mean, you say everything's going Uberized.
Yes. everything's going Uberized for sure. We're not going to see the person at the customer service counter. It's going to be swipe here for your order and swipe here to pay.
So that's also taking jobs.
No question about it. No question. I mean, the Numora research, not ours. Korn Ferry doesn't do a lot of research in this area. We do a lot of research on how to optimize talent, how to make talent more productive, how to grow people's skills to perform better. But Numora research basically came out with a pretty controversial concept that said over the next 10 to 15 years, theoretically, jobs that are systemic, repetitive, and require analysis are ripe for automation, replaced by machine decisioning. Whether they'll happen or not, there's other reasons, but the ability to do it is there.
Why wouldn't it happen?
Well, one thing we've seen in the job market is that the government hasn't slowed down hiring. If anything, they've increased it, including the benefits. Is it hard for companies to attract and retain talent, given that the government is stepping in and hiring?
No, that's a good question. I would bet in some of those, what we would call the middle-class level jobs, there is probably competition from government now. There was quite a big disparity between government payroll or government wage levels and what you can make in a corporate setting. But, I mean, even if you look at not so much straight government jobs, but look at teachers' compensation. Teachers' compensation now is at or potentially above similar professionals like registered nurses and CPAs. So there are public sector jobs that are paying well.
Wow. Alan, great insights. Thanks so much.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it very much. Alan Guarino there. Be sure to